Lyrics High from LearnByBlogging.com. Today I want to give a review of this book that's called The Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. Just Mercy is a story of justice and redemption. I have this notes put up here. If you can follow along, much easier for you to follow along. Basically, Mr. Stevenson, in my opinion, should just wear a cape, or he's gonna win a Nobel Prize. In my prediction, he's like a modern Atticus Finch, as in the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. By the way, the new novel is called Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. Kind of turned that image of Atticus Finch a little bit upside down. Anyway, he is almost like the Atticus Finch. He saved many people from the death rows, unjustly convicted because of the sloppy police work, and or being young and being ignorant, or even mentally retarded, like in the case of Horace Dunkins. But mostly being poor. He have high probability of being injustice, and according to him, the opposite of poverty is not wealth, but rather it is justice, as is often quoted. And he wants to do more than Atticus Finch, more than that Atticus Finch already accomplished. In the story where the jail black man eventually in the novel did not even have a good ending. And he wants to have a better ending for his client. My key takeaways are most of the book is about this person called Walter Mamillion. Most of the story is about this guy called the Walter Macmillan case. Is an epitome of a racial injustice in this country, especially in the South, like the state of Alabama. It can be attributed to the prevailing racial bigotry against blacks, especially one that relatively successful and uneasily, especially the ones who are relatively successful, and uneasiness about the interracial relationship. Well, in this case, he had a actual marital affair with a white woman, and also the legal maneuver of the overzealous prosecutors, without a concern for the truth, and the inertia of the legal system to really not rock the boat or boosting the judge's chance of being elected by acting really tough and winning the votes. So of course, the biggest contributor to injustice is their poverty, not having enough money to get proper legal counsel, legal representation, and it's really sad to see that the attorney is actually fighting over the budgeted $1,000 legal fee for a capital murder case in the state of Alabama, and that's pretty sad. Number two is that Mr. Stevenson really makes very good arguments about turning away from executing juveniles in the capital cases, and reducing the sentences of the juvenile non-capital cases. Yes, we were all young and stupid at once in our youth, and for those unlucky ones who are not having the proper adult supervision or being poor, they will just go astray and got themselves in a huge trouble. And they really deserve a second chance, a second look, and even have some mercy. So in the past years, I myself have gradually moved away from believing in capital punishments to the one that I'm against it. And that in addition to the legal cost, to me, that just doesn't make sense. All the appeal. And the marginal error is simply too large in this particular legal systems. Despite being one of the best in the world, of course, this means that the innocent one may get locked up for life without the new focus, the new worthiness of focus of the death sentence. So there's a downside of not having the death sentence. And the book's relatively lopsided, in my opinion, on the side of unjustly accused and punished. It would be good for Mr. Stevenson to present the other side, those that are actually justly accused, to be more impartial. But I guess he's not exposed to that side of the equation. Mr. Stevenson is very good at telling stories. The book really reads like a novel, and it's full of intrigues and twists and turns and all that. Great. I think if Mr. Stevenson doesn't write this type of novel, this type of book, he can write a very good novel. So this excellent book on how the disadvantaged person can get in the legal systems, get into this legal justice system if you are poor and young without supervision, or get in trouble in this legal systems without supervision. And women are just being black, in his words, broken. I'm not sure if he and his equal justice initiative can save all, but he's making a difference in turning the tide. Okay. So this is a quick summary of each chapter by chapter. There's some spoiler of the story. If you want to read the book, you can skip this portion here. So a short summary: chapter 1 to 3 basically sets up the story of Walter Mamillion, and who's in interracial extramarital affair with a young white woman. Really got himself targeted as a suspect of a murder of a young white young woman in the laundromat, and he encountered with the and in one of the speech where he was making, he encountered an old man in a wheelchair, encouraged him to keep beating the drum of injustice, and unfortunately Walter ended up in the death row. And chapter 4, there are several death row cases that were described, including Horace Dunkins, who are mildly retarded man, and whose execution took a second jolt. It takes 2 jolts to put him to death, because the electrodes was wrongly placed. Also, there's a post-traumatic syndrome veteran, PTSD veteran, who unintentionally killed a child to win the heart of his girlfriend, or his friend, girl that he's pursuing, when the child actually picked up the bomb and blow up, and this person got into the death row. Chapter 5, Mr. Stevenson took the Walter case. So between chapters, I think he put his interlaced with some interesting story from the other cases. But 50% of the story is on Walter Mamillion. And chapter 5, Stevenson took Walter's case and met Walter's extended family. He got the call from the accuser, Bill Myers, and Bill Myers' colleague, Daryl Houston, who spoke about being with the accuser at work during the time of the crime. So the person was harassed and arrested by the police as a warning shot for blowing the whistle on them. Chapter 6, the author narrated a juvenile being tried as an adult. And Charlie is a 14-year-old boy shot and killed a police officer, George, after his off duty at that time. After his mother happened to be his mother's boyfriend, knocked his mother unconscious and not dead, as he expected. But when Stevenson met Charlie's at the adult prison, Charlie was still in shock of being raped by several men in the prison. And the story had a very good ending, as a nice old white couples from a church that Stevenson was giving speech to eventually corresponded with Charlie and took him in as their family. So that's one of the good story in the book, good ending in the book. And chapter 7, back to Mamillion's case, he got a break from getting Bill Myers' withdrawal of the recanted his testimony, and they finally got the incredulous police records, and the team went to work and work on the appeal. Chapter 8, and this chapter there's three child lifers stories. They're serving life sentence. Trina Garnett, the story was described as a sad case, a poor, broken, large family whose mother died when she was 9, and she later became homeless at 14 in order to escape her father's sexual abuse, and found herself in jail for accidentally, indirectly causing 2 boys' death in a fire. So in the jail, she was raped by a correction officer and became pregnant, and she's serving life sentence now, and is now 53 years old. Been serving for almost 40 years. Then there's this young Manuel story of serving life sentence after shooting a victim, the failed robbery attempt, and he was 13 years old at that time. And another boy, Antonio Nunez, was given a life sentence at 14 and for fake kidnapping and attempted murder of a police officer. And no one was injured in the case, so it's kind of strange that this person is serving a life sentence. Chapter 9, Stevenson described the the hearing on the Walter McMillian's case, and this is the turning point whereby the accuser recant in front of the judge, and other witnesses were all brought in, and there were several dramas involving Mrs. Williams' appearance and confronting the police dogs twice. There's an interesting story in that in the court scene. Chapter 10, the condemned mentally ill is the central theme of this chapter. The statistic of over 50% jail inmates now are mentally ill is truly stunning. And George Daniel suffered a head trauma during a car accident and became disoriented after being kicked out of the bus. And he accidentally shot a police officer who came into the scene to confront him, and then got shot during the struggle for the gun. And he was given the death sentence after being diagnosed competent to stand trial by a fake doctor. Then there's a story about Avery Jenkins, who raised as a foster child, and many moving from foster family to foster family, and because of his mental illnesses, he kept asking for a chocolate milkshake during the visit by Stevenson's, who faced difficulty in passing the white prison guard. And there's an interesting story, a nice twist on that story when the white prison guard eventually come to his aid. Chapter 11, back to McMillian's case. Stevenson got 60 Minutes and all the media involved, and finally won the freedom for Walter after enduring the numerous bomb threats and several setbacks. And chapter 12, and so that was the kind of the not quite ending for Walter case. Chapter 12, Marcia Colby, baby died in the stillbirth, and then they buried in the backyard. She was later arrested for being a baby killer and serving a life sentence, and ended up serving 10 years after Stevenson's successful appeal. And she eventually got out. It's not a happy ending. Chapter 13, new Walter. Chapter 13, now the Walter McMillian was out and facing the new challenges, including the financial one, to get back on his feet. And his civil lawsuit against the police and the state prosecutor couldn't go anywhere because they were exempt from prosecution. And Walter's mental state deteriorated. Okay, Chapter 14, Joe Sullivan was 14, and this is a different, back to a different case now. Joe Sullivan was 14, convicted of a rape assault, most likely wrongfully, and became ill and contracted multiple sclerosis and became wheelchair bound. And here Stevenson described his battle with the Supreme Court to ban life sentence for juvenile offenders. Chapter 15 is that Walter was deteriorated to a point where he needs constant care, and this is the chapter where they mention about his broken. And there's another retarded person, Jimmy Dill, has a stuttering problem that brought back an old childhood memory. And despite Stevenson's gallant effort, this person was executed. And at this point, Stevenson was broken, and he was so sad. And there's a few quotes here I think that's very true to the meaning, and going into the reason why Stevenson is doing what he does. And the quote goes like this: "Our brokenness is also the source of our common humanity, the basis for our shared search for comfort, meaning, and healing. Our shared vulnerability and imperfection nurtures and sustains our capacity for compassion." And second quote: "Embracing our brokenness creates a need and a desire for mercy, and perhaps a corresponding need to show mercy. When you experience mercy, you learn things that are hard to learn otherwise. You see things you can't otherwise see. You hear things you can't otherwise hear. You begin to recognize the humanity that resides in each of us." And Stevenson, and this is end of quote. And Stevenson also described his encounter with Rosa Parks and the interesting conversation they had just before Miss Rosa Parks passed away. Chapter 16, this is the last chapter. Stevenson's, in May of 2010, celebrated the victory of winning the Supreme Court decision on banning life's imprisonment without parole imposed on children convicted of non-homicidal crime. That is cruel and unusual punishment and constitutionally impermissible. So he finally won the battle. His effort is starting to take effect across the country. Stevenson is the stone catcher. This is referring to the Bible story about he who has without sin may cast the first stone, and he is the one who catch those stones at the people. The mercy is most empowering, liberating, and transformative when it's directed at the undeserving. And the people who haven't earned it, who haven't even sought it, are the most meaningful recipients for our compassion. So that's the end of it. And this is a great book of change people's mind about capital punishment, and also enjoy very good stories with some good and some bad endings. And it may cheer you up, feeling hopeful, knowing that there are people like Bryan Stevenson in the world. And so there you have it. I have you can see a lot of the I put in some extra video here that you can see that from his website, and that I captured from the YouTube. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that program, this program, and great book. And I think everybody should read them. This is simply will change your mindset about capital punishment, and you might end up shed a few tears about the suffering of these people, and a good tearjerker. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.